Hello. I am here at the request of Venerable Phong from Watarun here in Bangkok. I am here for a series of Dharma talks, and my name is Samanin Jim, and I'm from Wat Sap Cha Om near Phra Phuthapat in Saraburi province. In the next series of talks, we're going to be discussing the mystical experiences associated with the spiritual journey, highlighted by the Tambolian map, as well as choices that you have to make and the conflicts that you have to resolve within this journey. Today, our guests are Upasaka Janya Vasuk. He is Chopan and first student, and Anna Ninashava. Oh, I messed that up.
One more time.
Ninashava, both from Moscow, Russia, and are currently doing a documentary for Russian TV, as well as organizing an independent film on Buddhism. Our topic today is going to be death and dying. And referring to the Tambolian map, the question in one of the corners is, what is the name of the shadow of death? And it's part of a meditational experience that one has to face in their spiritual pilgrimage. Interestingly enough, the Buddhists here are not as serious as most people, and I managed to collect some of the more humorous stories in the Buddhist humor book. And what I want to do is we're going to introduce some of these stories at this time. Rinpoche, one of the stories goes like this. Rinpoche, what do you know about death? Death likes everyone, possibly everything. When it is time for you to visit, you are welcome at any time, day or night, and you don't even have to dress up.
When we talk about death, death can be funny.
Listen, most people find this a very serious issue, and it certainly can be, and sometimes it certainly should be, but it doesn't necessarily always have to be. Certainly in your preparation for the journey, thinking about it in, let's say, different points of view sometimes gives you some insights that you might normally have. Another story is there something after death? The abbot says, I don't know, but it must be interesting because it seems that no one wants to come back. The question is, yes, why don't they want to come back? Maybe this is
so good to stay there, yeah.
Maybe it's more interesting there.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you know, Master Yogi says, do you know what happens after death? Only the last one, replied the yogi. Really? Said the student. He says, yes, I died and came here. You know, certainly part of it is, were you someplace before you were here? And the question is, were you someplace before you came here?
And how you call that place?
Yes, what is that place? That's certainly part of a meditational practice and a meditational experience, and something you're expected to know eventually. A student asked a master, says, is it possible to avoid death? And the master said, easy. Don't get born. So I guess being born has that hooked onto it. The question is really which comes first.
So it means we didn't avoid it at all because we get born already.
Yeah. A person was dying, and he said, the person said, I'm a young man. And the master said, compared to death, all life is short. So even though I'm close to 70 and you are 30, it seems like my life doesn't, when I think about my life, is it quick or slow or fast? And it seems very quick.
Actually, we have some question.
Yes.
A lot of people, they're talking about death and discussing death and writing the books. And the question is, can you really talking about death without this experience of dying actually in life? Because I know that there are so many practice of some special meditation which can get you to that point. And can I talk about that if I didn't have this kind of experience? For example, I know you have, yeah, and when you're talking about death, I absolutely agree with you. But so many books, so many people talking. Do they do the right talk if they don't have this kind of experience?
Oh, well, certainly I have come across those books in the last 40 years, and many times you can tell the difference between people who are speculating about death and the people who have actually experienced it. Now, many of the people that I've talked to, and certainly myself included, is their biggest surprise is being back here. And mostly they're very disappointed about being back here. And in fact, most of these people that do come back didn't want to come back. And they're mostly disappointed. And I think that's a very good clue on people who've actually been on the other side. And trying to fit back into here is very difficult. In fact, you don't completely fit back here.
But can you share a little bit your own experience? Because I know that you have this experience twicely. Is it true?
Well, yes. I managed to come back twice, unfortunately, twice.
Please share.
I think it's important to understand that we actually go through little death or experiences a number of times in our life. For example, you were an infant, and then you were a child, and then you were an adolescent, and then you were a young adult. Well, sometimes as an adolescent or a teenager, sometimes it's nice to think about, well, if I was only a child again. But it turns out you don't fit back into that place any longer. You pass through some doorway in your growth experience where you are no longer a child. You were something else. And that most people can recognize when that happened, or approximately when that happened. And after it happens, you don't go back anymore. Certainly there's an argument about people over 30, certainly from people who are under 30, and that argument is there's a big gap between before 30 and after 30. And it turns out there's a huge gap between before 30 and after 30, and you are actually going through that gap.
Yeah, just exactly on that.
You were on that gap.
Yes.
But when you look back at people how people are 20 years old behave, you go, did I behave like that? And the answer is yes. And the question is, do you want to do that again? And mostly the answer is no. But what's on the other side of 30 is completely unknown. You don't know what 35 is. You don't know what 40 is. It's something that you have to look forward to or not look forward to. But you no longer look at 25 and say, I really wish I was 25 again, or doing what I was doing at 25. And the answer is no, you probably don't want to do that again.
But what is compared to death? What is this topic?
Well, certainly you look at what you have currently. You have a body.
Yes.
That dies. Question is, are you your body? Well, yes, to some extent you are your body.
For a while.
But you're not only your body. The next question is, are you your memories? Well, if you think about memories, are they completely clear? Are they complete? Do they include everything that happened? I think that most people will agree that their memories are incomplete, and whatever happens is incidental compared to the memories that you have of what actually did happen. So you're not your memories either. In fact, what actually happened goes some other place. And there is a place where all of these events took place and they happened, and it matters somehow. Somewhere it matters. And I think that it's important as part of a meditational practice is to recognize that you can access that place of where the experiences go, and that those experiences actually contribute to your meditational practice. So you're not your body, you're not your memories. Are you your mind? Your thinking mind, your analytical mind, your look in the mirror and that's me mind. And when you do something, you hear of a voice in your head that says, why did you do that? And what part of your mind actually is watching you live your life? These are part of meditational questions that when you die, how do they all separate out into their various places, and are they all you? Or is any of it you? And at this moment of death that we see when our body stops functioning, then obviously returning to that body is no longer an option. But what are these other conditions? Where do they go? And that's part of, I think, being receptive to the death as a kind of more of a complicated thing other than just walking into the white light and hoping for the best. And,
yeah, I have a very important question, actually. If you recognize yourself that you are not body, you are not actually memory, and you are not mind at all, so many kinds of minds, hundreds of different minds, not you. What is you?
Yeah, well, you have male mind, hello, and you have female mind. Are they the same mind?
Okay, if you recognize I am not that part, I'm just using them for a while, like car. What do you find? Who are you? What are you?
Exactly, and that is what is left on the other side of this doorway. I think we'll both agree that female mind and male mind aren't the same mind. They don't look at the information the same way. They don't interpret things the same way. Do they go to the same place? I don't know. You have to go through that doorway. I think also that certainly my experience is if I try to bring all of my guesses through this doorway, they simply don't go through the doorway. For example, I'm an athlete. When I compete in Olympic sport, springboard diving, when you do a dive perfectly, it is effortless. It's like you don't do anything. You just go up, you do the dive, you hit it right, you go into the water perfectly, you don't feel anything. It was a completely effortless moment. So all of the struggle and the issues and everything else don't get to that effortless moment. It doesn't go there. So once you get to that effortless moment, all the things that preceded it don't matter. And I think going through that doorway is like that. All the things that got you to the doorway don't go through the doorway. Just you go through the doorway. And what you need to deal with is what went through the doorway and what do you have to work with. It's not memories, it's not your body, it's not your family, it's not your relatives, it's not your expectation, dreams, fantasies, and delusions, and everything. None of that fits through the doorway. Something else fits through the doorway, and on the other side of the doorway is not here. It's another place. The Buddha Dhamma talks about it in the Heart Sutra. It's unconditioned space. Unconditioned space actually means there's no conditions. There's no right, wrong, left, right, nose, eyes, ears, body, mind consciousness, old age, gender, values, right or wrong. None of this, these are all parts of conditioned space. They don't fit through the doorway. It's unconditioned space that you get to go to. Now if you go there cranky and upset and and fussy and bent and wrong, then your ability to deal with that unconditioned space may be small. Another issue is, and many times Christians and even Buddhists talk about heaven and hell. Well, there's an earth and there's a universe. There's an earth and universe. There's not two universes. There's not two earths or earth-like conditions. There's not two kinds of lives. There is a life and there is not life. So there's not a heaven and hell. Why would there be two different places? One place is enough.
It's funny. No need to create two places.
Yeah, one place is enough. And once you go there, then you have to deal with what is there. And most of what goes through that doorway stays on this side of the doorway.
But looks like this saying put all religious things on the big question. Yeah, because so many people, they say, okay, have like this life will bring you here and this life will bring you here. Even here in the Buddhist country we find this. They teach about this in the temples.
In merit, yes. You do good merit, then you'll go to a good place. If you look at that, does that make any sense? For example, if you're a good person, you will do good merit. But does the merit make you a good person? Or are you a good person first? Well, if you're not a good person, if you don't understand merit, how are you going to know about merit? You can't even know about merit unless you're a good person. If you're a bad person, you don't learn about merit, you don't learn about any of that. So which came first, the merit or being a good person?
Good person.
I think so, being a good person.
Yes, I think so too.
For example, the vows you take, the Samanine vows or the Upasaka vows you take, basically it says don't steal, don't lie, don't get intoxicated, but these are not religious vows. These are not Buddhist vows. These are social and cultural vows. They don't have anything to do with Buddhism. They don't even have anything to do with spirituality. They have everything to do with just getting along with one another. Christians have this, Muslims have it, Sikhs have it, Hindus have it. Everybody have these values that don't have anything to do with their religious conditions. It has everything to do with how you got there. If you lied and you stealed and you did other things, you would never get to a religious experience or religious values.
Okay, so in the end, can we conclude a little bit about death? Because I'm pretty sure that our viewers, they have a lot of questions about it and nobody knows what to answer, because if you don't have this experience, you don't know what is it, okay? Just wondering, where should I go? What is going to happen with me?
Well, certainly other people have gone before, and mostly they tell funny stories, and here's another one.
Yeah.
The Lama asked, a student asked a Lama, do you speak to the dead? And the Lama said, oh, the dead are easy to speak to. It's the living who are tough. And I find that sadly true.
But it's also part of Buddhist humor, of the book.
Well, I think it's part of meditational humor. I think the Hindus and anyone who goes through that particular experience understands and appreciates that experience. So I don't think Buddhists have a monopoly on this particular idea. I think it's merely a spiritual or a meditational value rather than a traditional value.
Yeah.
Although the Buddhists value this, it doesn't mean that others don't and can't. And it doesn't mean you have to be a male or a Russian or an American or a European or a Thai to appreciate this. All of those conditions are irrelevant once you get there.
Can I find the answer for this question by myself to using the map as a tool? Because actually before I was asking myself many times, where I'm going? What is happening with me after I leave in the body? Yeah, so can I find the answer by this?
Well, certainly a map is a map of the spiritual journey. And at the end of that spiritual journey, there's maybe questions that you will actually answer before you go through the door. I think one of the questions may be, is this the truth or is this a lie? And that may actually it doesn't take long for that question to get asked when you are dying. Am I dying? Is this the truth? Is this a lie? You get to truths and falsehoods before you get to the door. Many times people get stuck there at truths and falsehoods and never get past, never get to the door. It's like they don't die. Their body goes away, but they don't go away. And that's not necessarily a good place to be. In the map, there'll be 3 places that talk about going to truths and falsehoods. And that's not dying. That's truths and falsehoods. But it's right before that door, and you have to appreciate the difference. So the map helps you understand that the journey will take you to the doorway, but you have to walk through the doorway on your own. And one of the questions is, what is the name of the shadow of death? It's not what is the name of death, it's what is the name of the shadow, or the shadow of the doorway, or the possibility of the doorway.
Can you answer this question?
Oh, it was lots of fun. When I first was posed this question, I was painting a house in Berkeley for the monks at the Phaeng Monastery with the lamas. And I was at the top of a 40-foot ladder, and this was a 3-story Victorian house. And I was painting the eave over here. And there was even a driveway that was even lower than this.
Okay.
And Lama Gyaltsen Rinpoche was at the bottom of the ladder, I'm not sure why. And the ladder slipped about 2 feet. Now 40 feet is 13 meters. And the ladder was blowing, and it slipped about 2 feet. And what happens is you get this incredible rush. And the Lama goes, "Ah, the shadow of death." And I knew exactly what he was talking about, of course. It wasn't death. I didn't die. But I certainly felt that death was very close, because if I fell off a ladder, there was no going back to the top of the ladder again.
Yes,
and I think other people have felt that. For example, we do an exercise where you fall back, where you let loose, let go of your initial conditions, and just trust.
yes,
And that gap is the shadow of death. It's not death. And when you talked about it afterwards, you talked about it as a death experience.
So it's it can be so many names of the shadow of death.
Well, I think the journey, or certainly the map, introduces you to the possibility of these conditions before you get to the doorway, so that you can recognize that this isn't going through the doorway. For example, someone says, well, if I'm enlightened, do I die? Well, enlightenment is a doorway into the mystical experiences, into the whole process. Is that death? Well, you probably don't fit back into delusion any longer, but is that death? No, it's not death. It's a doorway to another place. And it's different for men, it's different for women. And I think that has to be appreciated and valued. And unfortunately, what you see in the literature now is men's interpretation of this doorway. What I think needs to happen is women need to write their own books about their own experiences, which are going to be different. Unfortunately, we talk about the masculine or the matriarchal heaven, or the patriarchal heaven, excuse me, and it's good and bad and rough and death and fire and all this other stuff. And it turns out that the women's heaven is entirely different. And when they hear it, I know the women hear this, and they go, okay, it's men's stuff. And they never tell us, they really never complain. And I'm hoping that they do. I go, maybe that's not quite right. Nevertheless, we have looked at these ideas of death and dying. We've looked at the possibility of it existing in the map and the pilgrimage, the spiritual pilgrimage, pointing out to you the conditions that exist before the doorway, and that you should recognize these conditions as impermanent or not through the doorway. And that the doorway looks different to each of us, and that you can practice going through this doorway before you get there.
yes. I have very important questions. A lot of people, this is problem of all people. They afraid of death. How they must work on this problem, and why they thought that death so terrible? How do you think?
Well, I think what happens is they believe people who don't know anything about death, they believe people who don't know anything. So the best thing to do is stop believing those people. And I think you're only afraid of death when you don't know anything about it. And you listen to people that don't know anything about it and say it must be this way when they actually don't know. So part of meditational practice is going back through your experience and say what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And all of those comments about people who don't know anything about death, you go, thank you, that's really dumb, goodbye. And send that information back to them, because it's impolite. And it's up to you, it's your responsibility to in fact recognize what is reasonable information and what isn't. Most of the information you remember certainly before you're 30 won't matter after you're 30. In fact, I'm going to estimate that 100% of the things that you learned before you were 30 won't matter.
Wow.
And that what does matter is what you learn after 30. Well, it looks like we're about out of time.
It's good.
I want to thank you for your participation in this program.
Thank you.
And we will look forward to some more adventures in the future, I am sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I want to thank everyone for participating and listening to this program. And you will be able to contact Venerable Phaeng if you have any questions that we might be able to help you with. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We do interesting talk.